Alright everyone, what's up? So I'm actually recording during a flood right now, so if you hear any type of noises that resemble 1, a lot of water, 2, lightning, 3, anything rain related, you know why. There's a whole thing going on outside. I didn't go to school because of it, and so on and so forth. But today we're going to be talking about something that is always interesting at this time of the year, and that is the free agents that the New Orleans Saints should target. Now, I did a whole lot of these videos last year during the offseason. It's one of my favorite things to cover because the possibility of the New Orleans Saints gaining pieces that weren't part of the team last year that can contribute to the success of this season is literally just so exciting to think about. There are a lot of players that we can get that can stronger our chances or better our chances of going to the Super Bowl because there are a few holes that were so dominant this season, it just completely kept us out. And the first thing I would like to start with, in my opinion, is the biggest hole that the New Orleans Saints had this season is their wide receiver number 2. So we're going to be talking about some wide receiver targets that we can target during free agency. Of course, you can delve into the draft, but starting about after free agency ends and into April, we're going to be doing a lot of draft videos. But until then, free agency is the hot topic. We'll be talking about it from February to mid-March, and then we'll cover all of the signings that happen when they come. So before we get into the video, I'd like to say, again, I have a Patreon down in the description. If you would like to throw a couple bucks towards the channel to help us survive the offseason, I would appreciate that. You could keep this channel running for less than a McDonald's double cheeseburger. So go ahead, do whatever you want to do. If not, that's fine. But let's get into today's video. So the first thing I would like to discuss is actually how terrible the New Orleans Saints number 2 wide receiver situation was last year. The new season's coming into the play. It's time to start looking into things that we can get to better ourselves. The number 2 wide receiver position was one of the most big disappointments I have ever seen last year. It was absolutely terrible. Ted Ginn Jr. was supposed to be option number 2, but only came out of the year with 30 receptions, 421 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That isn't good. He's also a free agent and one that the New Orleans Saints will likely let walk. Our running back, Alvin Kamara, was the second most targeted player in the receiving game other than Michael Thomas, with 97 targets and 81 receptions with 533 receiving yards. Our running back had more yards than our number 2 and number 3 wide receiver, so that's definitely something that we need to look out for. It kind of just emphasizes the need for that number 2. Taysom Hill, our third string quarterback, had the same amount of yards and one more receiving touchdown than our third wide receiver, Traquan Smith. Of course, Michael Thomas absolutely killed it with his record-breaking season, but rolling with one wide receiver is never a good move. The New Orleans Saints need to make sure to get somebody else to throw the ball to secure Michael Thomas's longevity and make sure that he doesn't burn himself out or hurt himself with the massive amount of production he has to put forth for the offense for the Saints to succeed. The Saints seemed to show a big amount of care for this issue by doing due diligence on Antonio Brown, but him being his own worst enemy, Antonio Brown completely destroyed any chance for him coming to New Orleans. Jared Cook should have been a way bigger piece in the offense this year. He did have, I believe, around 800 yards, 9 touchdowns, something crazy like that. He did a very good job, but he only got into it about halfway through the season. So if he would have had those numbers all year, Lord knows what his stats could have looked like. Jared Cook should definitely be an explosive role in the offense next year, but yet again, rolling with one wide receiver is not a good idea. Jared Cook is a great target, but we need another wide receiver. That being said, the New Orleans Saints need to hit the free agent market and look around for some nice free agent acquisitions. Here are some of my favorite, going from least realistic to most realistic. Number 1, pretty unrealistic, is Robbie Anderson. Now, this would not be unrealistic if Robbie Anderson was an unrestricted free agent, but he is restricted, so expect the Jets to do whatever they can to keep on to him. Robbie is currently, like I said, in a restricted free agent up in New York with the Jets. He's stuck in the Jets' terrible offensive scheme. Last year, Robbie Anderson amassed 52 receptions for 779 yards and 5 touchdowns with only 3 drops. Keep in mind, Robbie played with Luke Falk, who was absolutely abysmal, Trevor Siemian, who sucks, and Sam Darnold that had a decent year. Robbie ran a 4.34 40-yard dash, which would give the Saints a wide receiver that can stretch the entirety of the field. He's a diamond in the rough looking to explode. If the Saints really want to win it all, taking a dig at Robbie Anderson and maybe acquiring him somehow would show a lot. His projected market value is the only problem, projecting to cost $12 million per year. Of course, that's not exact and there's no real way to tell yet, but it is still a feasible number to keep in mind and go off of. The New Orleans Saints only, I believe, have around $20 million in cap space right now, some of which has to be used to re-sign either Drew Brees or Taysom Hill or Teddy Bridgewater or all three or two of them. Who knows? In my opinion and a lot of people's opinion, it's going to be Brees and Taysom, but you never know. Teddy is going to get $20 million a year from someone, so resigning those two quarterbacks is going to cost a decent bit of change unless Drew Brees wants to take a pay cut. So Robbie Anderson is unrealistic money-wise, but we've seen Mickey Loomis do some insane things with cap space, so who knows if we're going to go ahead and be able to free enough for someone like him. Number 2 is going to be wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders, which is pretty unrealistic, but it's still nice to take a look at. Emmanuel Sanders, oh, Emmanuel Sanders. After being stuck in the Denver Broncos offense for years after Peyton Manning's retirement with absolute garbage excuses for quarterbacks, he's now a player on the San Francisco 49ers, a Super Bowl runner-up. But I'm a person that believes if Drew Brees is our quarterback, no matter what team a wide receiver plays on, he's automatically coming into a better system with the New Orleans Saints. So all of the garbage quarterbacks he had after Peyton Manning and Jimmy Garoppolo, this would be a huge upgrade for him entirely. Drew Brees will probably be the quarterback for 2020, yet we don't know. Either way, that's how it's looking. Emmanuel Sanders had 869 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, and an extremely long passing touchdown against the New Orleans Saints. Emmanuel Sanders is up there in age. He's 32 years old, but he has still shown the ability to play effective football. He has lost a step, but he isn't slow. He's not a player you consistently count on to beat coverage deep, though, but he would still be an extremely effective number 2 wide receiver, and I would be 100% okay with bringing him onto the team. I was really hoping we got Sanders at the trade deadline, but he ended up going and getting shipped to San Francisco because Denver's petty like that. It didn't happen. It would have been amazing, but that's not the case. Now let's go over Emmanuel Sanders' projected market value. His value is projected to be about $10 million per year, which is definitely 100% not out of the reach for this team. There are tons of ways the Saints, like I said, could go about relieving cap space strangulation. Go ahead and talk about Mickey Loomis being a great cap space wizard over and over again. There's a way, and we will figure it out. If it's not Emmanuel Sanders, that's okay, but those two are the two unrealistic but two very fitting wide receivers that could come into the system and make a huge difference right off the bat. Number 3 is probably my favorite wide receiver on this list, just because 1, we wouldn't have to shell out a lot of money for him, 2, his expectations aren't extravagantly high, and 3, we don't know his ceiling yet. It could be absolutely amazing. It could be just what he did this year. We don't know. And that player is, you might not have seen this coming, Rashard Perryman. Rashad Perryman is the exact production of a star-level talent wide receiver being stuck in a crowded locker room. This year, he had to play behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, both eclipsed 1,000 yards. Of course, it's going to be hard to spread the ball to 3 wide receivers and get them 1,000-yard numbers. He is extremely young. He's only 26 years old. Rashad Perriman is extremely fast. He ran a 4.24 at the combine. This is someone that could come in, stretch the field, run deep, beat them every 4.24. That is deadly speed. He shocked a lot of scouts when he ran that at the combine. It really shows how much he can contribute in the deep end of the field. So like I said, he is a great wide receiver that is stuck behind 2-star, all-star, perennial star wide receivers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He's young, only 26, and he ran a 4.24. I don't see how you can't like any of those things. He was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens and performed absolutely terrible with them. He had injuries to both of his hamstrings and his knees, which we all know are injuries that linger. He ended up being a healthy cut from Baltimore because of low production, and then he moved on. He went ahead and signed a 1-year deal with the Cleveland Browns and only had 300 yards. It isn't ideal, but when you think about it, it was in Cleveland. So he's an unrestricted free agent. Perriman had 35 receptions for 645 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. The thing is, though, in the last few games of the season, Mike Evans had to sit out. With Mike Evans sitting out, what do you think happened? Rashad Perryman absolutely exploded, going off for 113 yards and 3 touchdowns against Detroit, showing off his speed, 102 yards against Houston, and 134 yards and a touchdown against Atlanta. That is more than half of his yards coming in the last 3 games when his role was expanded beyond sitting behind Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Get this dude a starting job somewhere. He could be an amazing number 2 wide receiver in New Orleans. He is not made to be sitting there in Tampa's extremely crowded wide receiver room, and I doubt he wants to. Offer this dude like $4 or $5 million a year, and we get him in the bag. He would love to come play with Drew Brees. Rashad Perriman, come on now. Like I said, he's extremely fast and has good hands. This is my favorite low-key cheap signing that could be our ticket to the Super Bowl. Rashad Perriman, look out. If we do sign him, it could be a great thing. Last year, I'm pretty sure in every single one of my videos I made that wasn't the safety and defensive tackle one, we signed somebody out of the group that I mentioned. This is only 3 people, though, so will we sign Robbie Anderson, Emmanuel Sanders, or Rashad Perriman? Who knows? But it's definitely nice to try and, throw up some nice voodoo in the air. Some honorable mentions I'd like to throw out there that I'm not going to talk about. Danny Amendola from the Detroit Lions and A.J. Green. A.J. Green has a big upside, but he's injury prone, and Danny Amendola is Danny Amendola. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this episode of Free Agent Targets, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. I greatly appreciate everyone that clicked on this video. The support has been immeasurable lately. I love you guys to death, and I'll see you boys in the next one. Adios.
Ballin' like Barkley, wrist so sparkly, internet surfing, feel like I Carly.